I emailed you the slides, so just in case there's a problem here, you can bring them up on your side, okay? Cool. All right. So, my name is Mark Rasch. I'm a lawyer and a data technology and privacy specialist. And what I'm going to talk about today is how companies are increasingly using artificial intelligence in the selection, screening, employment validation, verification of potential employees. That includes 50 plus employees, and then the ways that individuals can use artificial intelligence to enhance their ability to find and compete effectively for jobs. And it's a very scary environment because having an interview with a real person is hard enough, but having an interview with a robot is even more difficult. And a lot of these tools, which were intended to be tools to assist people to find jobs or to weed out unqualified applicants, then become themselves the hurdle that you have to get past in order to get hired. And what that means is that if you don't get hired, you have no idea why it is you didn't get hired. And I do want to relate a simple example before I jump into the slides. My son works for a legal organization in downtown DC, and he recently had to interview somebody for a job. And he noticed that as he was doing the interview of this person, the person wasn't over 50, but as he was doing the interview with the person would, he would ask a question, the person would stop and pause, be typing on the keyboard, and then give some really good answers to the question. And what my son realized after a couple of questions was the person wasn't answering the questions. They were typing the questions into an AI chatbot and then reading off the screen whatever the chatbot said. And so the answers were fine. They were kind of anodyne and not specific. It was the kind of answer that you might expect to be given by a computerized program. Needless to say, that person did not get the job. And that's examples of bad ways to use artificial intelligence. So I'm going to bring up the slide presentation right now. All right. And you should be able to see it now. And what we're going to talk about here, and I see you have the poll on top, so I'll let you answer the poll first. All right. And if you want to, you can move that off to the side. So when you talk about AI, artificial intelligence, what you're talking about is a use of a computer technology that's been around for about 30 or 40 years. It goes through various iterations. It was called artificial intelligence, machine learning, directed machine learning, heuristics. And in fact, if you've ever seen the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, the main computer, which is called HAL, was supposed to be an artificial intelligence program. Artificial intelligence takes many different forms. What we're talking about mostly today, when we're talking about artificial intelligence generally, is we're talking about generative AI, and those are things like ChatGPT. But artificial intelligence is used in a lot of different ways by a lot of employers or potential employers and by potential job seekers. So one of the good things about the way AI works is right now, if you're looking for a job, you put in a job title or a job description into one of either a search engine or a job website or something like that, and the search title that you're looking for defines what you're looking for. So if you're looking for a job as a program manager or an administrative assistant, you're going to find jobs for a program manager or an administrative assistant. Or more accurately, you will find jobs that somebody has coded as a job for a program manager or an administrative assistant. One of the things that artificial intelligence does is it can take your resume and then go out, instead of just searching for potential jobs, it can match your resume to a job. What it also means is if you find a job that you want, you can then use artificial intelligence to match your resume to that job. So instead of just searching and applying, or pray and spray, as we call it, all right, AI gives you the ability to, based upon your job history, your interests, and the like, to help you find a job that is perfect for you. The flip side of that is it helps the job seeker, the person posting the job, find the applicant that is perfect for them. The other thing AI can be used for is it can be used to increase your visibility, to create a persona for you on the internet, to help you write articles on subjects that will grab interest by potential employers, by helping you update your profile, and helping you with a lot of different areas. For example, generative AI can be used for interview questions. I'm applying for a job as a technical specialist in the manufacture of zinc oxide products. What are 20 questions that they might ask me in an interview? Something along those lines. So that's also useful in a way you can use AI. So the first thing to do is understand what AI is and what it isn't. By and large, what we're talking about now when we talk about AI is we're talking about the analysis of large volumes of data. So when you look at AI and you say, I want you to write me a short story about a man and a whale, and he's searching for a whale, and it's a great white whale, and he ultimately he finds the whale. Okay, how does the AI program know what to write? And the answer is ultimately, of course, just like we did in third grade, we were assigned Moby Dick. We didn't read it. And at the last minute, we bought some Spark Notes or something like that. We said, Moby Dick is a story about a whale, right? This is what we remember about Moby Dick. That's essentially what AI programs do. They read whatever is available to them on the internet, and they assimilate it both stylistically and factually. Now, there are a lot of limitations involved in AI. Number one, it can only be trained on whatever it is pointed to. Number two, it can't tell right from wrong, good from evil, anything like that. Number three, it is a product of whatever biases exist in the models in which it is trained on. And number four, it doesn't know that it's biased. It doesn't know whether it's good or bad. And one example would be, you tell an AI program, analyze every baseball game ever played, and tell me what is the most important factor in determining whether a team will win or lose. And it analyzes every baseball game and every statistic it can get, from the days that were played and what the weather was on that day and what stadium it was played in and whether they were the home team or the away team and the height and the weight of all the players and everything like that. And it comes down to the conclusion, the most important thing in determining whether or not your team will win or lose is whether they're wearing blue socks. And that may be the case. It may be a correlation, but that doesn't mean it makes any sense. And that's the other thing, is that humans have the ability to determine what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. Somebody sometimes right and sometimes wrong. AI programs can't do that. So platforms like LinkedIn and Indeed, what they're doing now is they're no longer just posting jobs and letting you look for it. They're doing pattern matching and job matching based upon the words that are contained in your resume. It will recommend your resume to people who have posted jobs based on what's in your resume. It will also recommend to you jobs based upon what's in your resume. It will send you job alerts based upon what's in your resume. They will suggest updates or changes to your resume to give you greater visibility, and they will help you tailor your resume to specific jobs that you might be looking for. So it's actually quite useful. One of the things to be worried about is what is called the ATS system. So a typical job search will go this way. You will look for a job, and you will find a job that you think you want, and you will apply for that job. By the way, not the best way to find a job. Best way to find a job is to find somebody in the organization and get them to recommend you. But let's assume that you've simply applied for a job. What's going to happen is there's going to be an automated program that's going to read your resume and parse your resume in terms of where did you go to school, how many years of experience you have, what were you doing on a day-to-day basis, all the things that an HR manager used to do. But it's now being done by this program called an applicant tracking system. And the applicant tracking systems, and there are most large companies use ATS. There are companies like Taleo, Greenhouse, JobVite, and they have a contract with the employers to do this kind of stuff. And what they'll do is they'll parse your resume, okay? It's usually the first stage that they take. And this weeds out from maybe 5,000 candidates to 50 candidates. So your resume will be weeded out based upon both knockout factors and balancing factors. A knockout factor would be you have to have a particular degree or certification. And if you don't have that degree or certification, your resume will be just kicked out immediately. You have to have a certain number of years of experience. You don't have those years of experience, you're kicked out immediately. You have to be willing to relocate or be willing to take a fully remote job or to take a non-remote job. And if you've indicated that you're not willing to do that, you're kicked out immediately. You may need to have a language skill or a certification. You don't have that, you're kicked out immediately. But there's hope. So for example, if you are applying for a job, remember these ATS systems, as sophisticated as they are not very smart. So if you're applying for a job and it requires you to be an RN and you're an LPN, okay? What you can write on your resume is, while I'm currently an LPN, I am taking courses towards becoming a registered nurse. The ATS system reads the words registered nurse in your resume and says, oh, RN. And so it will allow that to pass through that filtering system. Doesn't mean you're going to get the job. You're not lying about your qualifications. You're simply mentioning the qualifications that they have put in there as something that they want you to have. So the first step is resume parsing. It will go through your resume and pull out your education, your background, your name, your address, and all that will be sucked out of the resume. You'll upload a resume and it'll take that out. What that means is when you write your resume, all the stuff we used to worry about in writing a resume, the nice font, the raised lettering, the clear bullet points, the white space, all that stuff that's important when a human reads the resume is actually distracting when a computer reads the resume. So you're going to be writing your resume as if it's going to be read by a machine. And one of the reasons you're going to do that is if you have any unique formatting in your resume, or you say things in a particular way, if you're not consistent throughout the resume, like your first job, you say, my job title was this, and this is the company I work for. And the second line is, this is the company I worked for, and this is my job title. And the third one is, this is where I worked physically. This is the name of the company. This was what I did, and this was my job title. It won't know how to deal with it. So what you want to be able to do is have a consistent format that will be read by the program, that will be date, employer name, employer location, job title, description, and qualifications. And that way, when you submit it, you're not going to have to spend another 2 hours essentially rewriting your resume on the computer to make sure it formatted. I'll give you an example of that for me. I teach, as Jody mentioned, I teach at about 8 or 9 different universities. And at the end of my resume, I have a list of all the colleges and universities I teach at, or taught at, the name of the course and the year that I've done it. Every time I submit my resume for a parsing, they think that that's my education, and they will list 30 schools that I went to because they can't tell. And I end up having to take it out. And I've tried many different ways to tell it, no, that's not where I went. That's where I teach. I still can't get past it. So every time I submit my resume, I have to go in hand by hand and delete those things out. So you want to write a resume that is designed to be parsed so that it'll make your job application process easier. And that's why you're going to use tools like My Perfect Resume is one that will build your resume in the same way that they unbuild your resume. Okay. So
Mark,
yes.
Someone has a question. They said, so there is an algorithm or certain words that AI looks for to weed out candidates?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the reason why companies are using it. They are using it so that they only have to review a dozen qualified candidates from 5,000 applicants.
Okay, here's another question. If ATS is screening for parsing, how important are quantified results?
It is going to depend. What's going to depend is whether or not the job you're applying for is something that requires quantified results. Okay. And here's a little trick. If you want to know what your resume should look like, look at what the job description is asking for. If the job description says things like attention to detail, friendly demeanor, ability to work with other people, make sure your resume says that as well. So there are many jobs for which there's a quantitative part of it. If you're a salesperson, they want to know how much sales did you make? How much did you increase the sales? How much did you increase the profitability? How much did you expand the visibility by? And things like that. There are a lot of jobs you're going to apply for where the job description is not quantitative, and they're looking for something different. But you should make, to the greatest extent possible, your resume look like the job description they have defined. Villamar?
Okay, I'm going to give you two more questions and I'll let you go on. In addition to My Perfect Resume, can you recommend other programs / apps?
Cool. Go to ChatGPT and say, can you recommend 10 good resume writing programs for ATS systems? Google will do the same thing, but I just want you to play with ChatGPT.
And just please make sure that people are not having these systems write their resumes, because
I'll
that
get
is
into that in just a minute.
Okay. In this last question right now, should I upload a resume and still go in and manually insert the employment information? I submitted an application and it said, if you submitted a resume, the manual input was optional. Should I have done it anyway?
So here's what you're going to do. You see here, here's one where it says, I can either submit my LinkedIn data, my information from Indeed, or pick my own resume or CV. So let's assume I pick my own CV, click choose a file, and I upload it. Then what I'll be taken to is they will parse my resume in the way they think it works, and then display it that way. If I'm happy with what it's displayed, I don't need to put it in manually. If, on the other hand, it screws it up, which it often does, I'm going to be editing and reviewing that manually anyway. All right. So you don't have
Okay,
to.
and are columns considered a formatting that will distract the ATS system?
Yes. Columns look great on a paper resume, and it screws up the ATS system.
Okay, and then I'm going to have you continue your thing, but someone asked, please explain ChatGPT so you can, as you're going on.
I will show you that in just a minute.
Okay.
So it'll auto upload and it'll create this system here. This is what it's going to pull out from your resume. So it's going to tell you name of the employer, job title, start date, end date, and then your responsibilities. All that came from a resume, and it'll extract that data from your resume and create this for each job, current job, next job, next job, next job, and it'll pull it out. And what you'll find out is, guess what I forgot to write on my resume? I forgot to write start date, or I forgot to write end date. Okay. And what ends up happening then is I end up having to go through this each time I apply for jobs and add start date and end date. So then it'll teach you, wait, go back to my resume and put that stuff in the resume for each of the jobs. That'll make it that much faster to do it. Okay. So what should happen is you click upload my resume and you get to you're taken to fully formatted, absolutely perfectly written job descriptions for each one. It doesn't happen, especially for us, because one of the things that we do is if you've been working for 30 or 40 years, you're going to have jobs that are going to go back 30 or 40 years. You may have 10 or 12 different jobs going back for your whole career. You may only have one. You may choose to say, look, I'm only going to pick the jobs that I think are relevant. That's great, but that creates gaps in your resume. And so what I've done is I put in my last 3 jobs, and then I say in another page, other work experience. And it's not intended to be comprehensive. That's great to a human who reads it. When an AI program reads it, they don't know what to do with it. So that's a problem. You're going to ask me in the chat, so what do I do about that? And the answer is, I have no idea. All right. So then you're going to have questions like this that are going to pop up. What's your citizenship, driver's license, minimal age for work? These are all knockout questions. All right. So there's two kinds of questions again, eliminators and raters. So are you willing to work flexible hours? Are you working to work out of town? Those are going to be knockout questions. You're still going to answer them. And then they'll send your resume to a screening service. And the screening service will do a background check. They may, in some states, where they're allowed to, they may do a criminal history check. That's not allowed in every state. They may do a credit check. So all of the data is then done for the screening services. Then you may get some of these personality or aptitude tests. And I took one of these a couple of years ago, and I failed miserably. And I have no idea why I failed miserably. This is like taking the SATs all over again. And this would be an example of what would be the next drawing in this equation. I have no idea. All right. So one of the things you can do when you're setting up a job interview is you want to ask, are you using any kind of aptitude tests? All right. Will there be an aptitude test in the screening? If there is, ask them the type of test, and then you can take sample tests yourself to see what they look like. They also use personality profiling. And the personality profiling will ask you a series of questions about what you would do in how you rate yourself in terms of getting along with other people, how you would deal with challenging situations, what you would do if you were confronted by somebody. It may give you ethical questions. Again, one of the things you want to do is you want to ask if those kinds of questions are going to be asked, what tests they're using, and take some sample tests. There's also situational judgment tests. And here I'll give you this one. Customer calls and complains. Okay. Sorry. There we go. About the service you received yesterday from a representative. What would you do? How would you handle that? And again, you want to find out if this is one of the tests that they're going to be giving. Job-related knowledge tests. A lot of this is pre-canned for particular job descriptions. You want to find out if they're using that as well. Background checks also, we talked about that. And then a video interview, which I'll skip, and how to prepare for the video. All right. And these are some of the assessment tests. One of this is called Thomas International General Intelligence Assessment, Greenhouse ATS Systems, JobVite has an ATS system. So I'm going to skip out of this for a second. Okay, and I am going to answer the question about ChatGPT. So. All right, and let me share this screen here for you. All right, can you see the ChatGPT screen? Cool. So this is what ChatGPT looks like. There's nothing there. You can do, and so let's say, what are the top 10 qualifications for a cyber security job? And this is generative AI. It will generate these.
The writing is very small, Mark, so you might have to read them out.
I will embiggen it.
Okay. Bigger.
There you go.
Know your audience.
All right. Another one might be, what 10 questions might I be asked in an interview for a job as a program manager on a large government classified program? All right. So it'll say like, this is pretty good, gives you an idea of some of the questions that might be asked at a job interview. And then same, but what are some sample answers? And I'm going to tell you why this is dangerous. And not particularly recommended, but I'll explain what is responsible use of artificial intelligence in job searching. So this will give you some sample questions and some sample answers. However, the answers need to be your own. So one of the things I can do is here, upload from the computer. It's one of the options you have in ChatGPT. I'm going to upload my resume. I will. Okay. Upload my resume and say, using this resume, rewrite it focusing on data privacy and practical solutions instead of data security. Okay. So oftentimes people will have more than one resume. I have different resumes for different purposes. I have a legal resume if I was looking for a job at a law firm. And there I emphasize my trial experience, stuff like that. I have a second resume, which is for data security compliance. So that focuses on data security, program management, things like that. I have a third one, which is about data privacy. That would be for a chief privacy officer, something like that. And many people have sets of skills that are useful for different kinds of jobs. And so one of the things that you can do is you can create specific resumes for specific job types. That's good, but not quite good enough. So one of the things you can do also is I can go to Indeed, just a sample job, and look for a data privacy job. Okay, nothing good. Let's say data privacy law. Okay, so let's just take, this is with Meta. Okay, and what I can do here is just copy all of this, not even reading it. I'm copying it. Put it in here. Paste. And say, rewrite my resume to make it perfect for the following job. And what it'll do is suggest a resume that's perfect for that job. Okay. And what it did on my resume, it left out a lot of stuff that I would normally keep in there. And I'm going to want to go back and put that stuff back in and rewrite this completely. I will not trust ChatGPT to write my resume, and I will not trust ChatGPT to write my cover letter. Remember that. Do not trust ChatGPT to do either of them. It's simple, it's easy, it's convenient, Do not rely on it that way. But what it did when it did this is it gave me some ideas, like advising major organizations on privacy by design, something they were looking for in the job description. They were looking at things like cross-functional collaboration. They're looking at legislative analysis, product and policy roadmaps, okay? And it will now put those themes into each of my jobs. Now, I think this is a terrible resume that it created for me, but it gives me some ideas of ways to change my resume to fit those job descriptions. You have a few more questions?
Yes, we have lots of questions.
All right, let's
So
go.
let me start giving you them. Hold on one second, just putting one in. Okay. Okay, we're gonna go back over here. An individual said you can ask ChatGPT to ask you interview questions, and then if you type out your answers, ChatGPT will give you feedback on them. Just don't take what it says as gospel. You have to put your own personality into it. And
That's
that's what
exactly
you were
right. And
just.
by the way, let me just show you something also.
Mhm.
Write a cover letter for the meta job. I just want to show you this. When you talk about your own personality, again,
Mhm.
okay? And there it creates a cover letter, right? Now, same, but write it in a funny and self-deprecating way. Okay? I'm just going to show you just how it can give you different styles. I wouldn't use this, but it's funny. Okay? And so you can, one of the things that ChatGPT can do, will be able to do better, is it can go through all of the things that you have written, like everything you've ever written, and decide what your style is. And it can start emulating your style in what it's writing, but it still has to be you. More questions? You're on mute.
Okay, I was asked to provide a strategy presentation on an element of the company's strategy that I applied to after a multi-faceted aptitude test. I felt a bit like this was getting free consulting, but I didn't feel I had an option but to comply, and I put a lot of work into it in order to compete for the job. Any suggestions on how to handle that situation if it arises again?
Yeah, so sometimes they're going to ask you for a sample, and what they want to know is, you know, can you work under pressure, and the like. If it's, you know, I would think unless you're a candidate for a high level executive position and you're one of the last 2 or 3 candidates, it is a huge imposition to ask people to do that. On the other hand, if I have somebody that I want to know, for example, it's difficult. They may ask me for writing samples, but if they would ask me for a memo that I'd written, I couldn't give it to them because it would be privileged. So they may ask me, could you show me what you would do under these circumstances? It shouldn't be more than 1 or 2 pages that they would ask you for. If they're asking you for more than 1 or 2 pages, then you have a dialogue with them. You know, am I one of the last candidates? How close are we? And that kind of stuff. I don't mind doing that, but it's a lot of work. And you know, because if you were to ask me to do it while I work there, I would be meticulous. And I want to be meticulous in this, but it's a lot of work. So, you know, the other thing you can do is you can put at the bottom of it a copyright notice as well. That way they can't use it.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, that was a
Well, let me
next
put it, they can't use it legally.
question. Perplexity AI is good for doing research on a company, but it provides the source of the information. That was something that someone said.
It there are many, that's another thing that AI can be useful for, is helping you do research on a company, on a job description. So you can go to AI. Somebody asked, by the way, how do you upload your resume?
Yeah.
If you have the paid for version, which is Chat 4.0 or the new one, Chat 4.0 or the newer one, which is now Chat 1.01 preview, which I don't have yet. It includes this little attached file on the bottom of it. So if you click on attached file, you can upload any file.
Okay. Does
Right.
resume length matter if you are using an ATS resume?
Yes and no. One of the advantages of using an ATS resume is there's no limit on the number of fields. Okay. Unlike a 1-page or 2-page resume, it allows you to be more comprehensive. I do not think an ATS system punishes you for having many fields on it. So that's good. On the other hand, you're going to have both a paper and an electronic resume. So what I typically do for myself is I have a resume, which is 2 pages long, and I have a CV, which is 14 pages long.
Okay. Can you upload the job description and upload your resume and ask ChatGPT to customize your resume to match?
Yes, you can. That was easy. However, again, don't take what it says as gospel, right? It will make mistakes. It will be bad. Okay. Therefore, what it's helpful for is if you go back to what it wrote, and take a look at this one here. Okay. Notice what it said here. Youth data and privacy violations. That was not in my original resume. It was, however, in their description. So it put it in. I never did youth data privacy violations at Unit 221B, but I did do it at SAIC. So I can now say, okay, I'm going to move this here and that kind of stuff. You are still responsible for ensuring that your resume is accurate.
Someone asked, how do you okay, because someone asked, can you upload the job description in your resume to customize it? But how do you upload your resume in ChatGPT so that it matches it with the job description? What are the steps?
So it's very simple steps. First, upload your resume. Attach file, upload from computer. Upload resume. And you saw one of the resumes that was called Rasch Resume Extended. That's my 12-page resume. So now my resume is attached. Then I go to the job description. And let's take a different one. There we go. And I'm just going to cut the whole thing. Copy. You can typically download more than one document and put them both in, but this isn't the downloadable document. And I'm going to say, redraft this resume for the following position. Create a downloadable with a, okay, you'll see what happens. Now I paste the job description in there. And it'll think for a few minutes. You can ask me more questions while this is going on.
Okay. Is ChatGPT the go-to, or are there others?
There are about a dozen of them that are useful. So one of them is Google's Gemini. One of them is, I'm sorry. Yeah. What are the top 10 AI generative AI programs in use in the US today? ChatGPT. Well, Google's Palm 2, Mid-Journey. They're used for different things. Okay. Now
And
these-
someone asked, is it worth to have the paid version of GPT?
It's $20 a month. You have to decide. For me, I use ChatGPT virtually every day for things where I upload something and have it analyze it. And for that, that is useful enough for me to pay that money. All right. And that may be, for example, somebody will send me an email and I'll say, summarize this. Or somebody will send me a large document and I'll ask it to summarize it for me. I still go back and read it, but it gives me that. So that is an issue.
Another question is, what is an ATS resume and when is it appropriate to use?
An ATS resume is just the resume that has been parsed by an ATS system. When you're creating an ATS system, and I can do this here, just through. Now, My Perfect Resume, again, is a paid-for service. But it will use the same tool for creating a resume that the AI programs use for parsing a resume.
And here's another great question. Are there any privacy concerns about uploading resumes? Thanks for the presentation and tips.
Sure. So let me just show you here this.
Okay.
This is my resume created by essentially an ATS system. And what it means is my formatting is always consistent. So when this resume is read by an ATS system, it will be read consistently. Okay. It has always the same date, title, location, bullet points. Okay. So this is a resume that is prepared to be used by an ATS system. It's way too long. But what it means also is that I can now take this resume here and change its formatting, making it look different on paper just by doing this. Okay. So I can make the resume look different on paper. It also means the other thing I can do on this, and this is all uses AI as well, is I can go to any of these job descriptions and I can say, give me some ideas of other ways to phrase this, or other skills or other things based upon the job description. Right? Privacy concerns, the answer is yes, but not as much as you would think. The privacy concerns are from sending your resume anywhere, but you've probably already put the bulk of your resume on LinkedIn anyway. And if you haven't, you will. And so those privacy concerns exist anyway. The resume and the stuff you put in your resume can all now be used for phishing, catfishing. I got somebody the other day sent me a text message on my cell phone and says, hi, we haven't talked in a while. Who is this? And I said, my name is Inigo Montoya. And they said, oh, hi, Inigo. How are you? I say, you killed my father. Prepare to die. Okay. So there's always privacy concerns, but the whole point of a resume is to get people to see it and read it.
Okay. And we have 2 more minutes, Mark. So I'm gonna, and then if you could jump in the chat to answer any unanswered questions,
Sure.
that would be great for a few minutes. Okay, let's see. How do you put a copyright notice on a sample of work you may provide to a prospective employer?
Either in the footer at the top of the document, you just write C like this. Zoom in on that. There we go. That was good enough. right? 5 years of intellectual property law to learn how to do that.
When you add the copyright disclaimer to your resume, does that warning, for
Put
lack
on
of a
your
better,
resume.
for a better word, apply to the AI app as well as the hiring employer?
All right. You've asked a question which thousands of copyright lawyers have struggled with over the years. The question is whether or not, the copyrighted work is your work, which can't be reproduced commercially without your permission or consent. However, it is unclear the extent to which a work that is partially or fully created by artificial intelligence may be copyrighted. So, we don't know. There's been dozens and dozens of law review articles written about that.
Okay. Anyway, Mark, we are, I want to just think, because someone said your ATS resume has columns in it. Didn't you say that columns were formatting not to use?
They are, which is why when I actually send it in as an ATS system, I pick the cleanest and simplest one of those formats.
Oh, okay. Okay, great. Okay. Well, thank you, Mark. Great presentation. We are, the last question that you answered is, okay, go to 10:56. I don't want to say the name because we're recording, but it starts with the letter N, and it's at 10:56, and just go downward. And when you answer the questions, if you could answer them directly to the individual that you are addressing. And for those, if you still have questions for Mark, as the next presentation will be coming up, if you have questions for Mark, you could address Mark directly and he will answer your questions in the chat. Mark will stay in chat for about 10 minutes or so. So if you've got additional questions for him, he will be happy to address them. So
Happy, but I'm happy to. Okay.
he's thrilled to answer them.
It's fine. I am happy. Thank you, guys. And it's a new world out there. It's going to take some.
Yes.
It is. Thank you.
Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Okay.
Thank you.